so many part-time real estate investors dream of quitting their day job to become a full-time investor and ultimately going into business for themselves in real estate investing. But it takes a leap of faith. It takes both some tangible tactical actions you have to take, and it takes a certain mindset to be able to do that. So we wanted to talk to someone who's actually done it. Tom Shallcross is a Chicago-based real estate investor. He's a full-time investor. He operates over 200 units. He's the host of the Straight Up Chicago Investor podcast. So, Tom, talk us through this process as you experienced it. Taking that leap of faith from quitting or working on a high-paying day job to becoming a full-time real estate investor.
Sure. No, thanks for having me, Brian. So, I think the everyone reads the book, right? And they just want to quit their job 90 days from the time they read it, right? Like everyone has this dream that real estate is this magical pill that you take and all your troubles go away. And I think hopefully most of your listeners realize that that's not true, right? There's, that's what a lot of people want to sell you or want to make you buy the course or whatever. But in reality is there's a lot that goes into this. So I think a lot of people make that jump too early. I'll just talk of my personal experience, like from the tactical side. I had a well-paying W-2 job. So, I have 4 kids. It's not like I'm in my 20s and I can just, take some risk here. Like I'm established, I have a lot of bills to pay, got to make sure that we have our feet under us. So you need to come up with a plan of where does that income come from, right? And, you have rental properties, but what else can you do? And, for me, it's flipping houses, right? Like we got very good at it, and we probably did, I don't know, 30 or 40 of them before I left. So it wasn't like, hey, I'm going to go start flipping. Like we had been doing a couple of year and ramping up before making that move. So it wasn't some, knee jerk reaction. This was thought of over time of, okay, like this is becoming consistent. We're getting better at this. This is going to work. So I just want to be careful because I know a lot of people they might see this headline and want to tune in and say, all right, here's my answer. I'm going to leave my job in the next 3 months. It's like, no, like this is very, very thought out. In For me, it took years, and for some people that might be quicker. Some people might have less to lose, so they can gamble a little more. Uh, but for me, that was the equation. And then mindset was moving into, I think, two things here. One, when you're 90 and you're on your deathbed or whatever age that is, like you're gonna wish you took more shots, right? Like you want to take that shot. That what if I should have done this? I should have started that business. I should have asked this question. Like you're gonna want to take that shot. So I always knew I was going to take it, and it was just parlaying that with the tactical side of like, all right, well, how do we do this and not get burned?
Yeah. And you raise a good point that as a parent with 4 kids, you have some very real expenses that maybe someone in their 20s could eat ramen noodles for a few months and really they could move in with their parents, or they could really streamline their expenses to be extremely low, whereas that's not necessarily an option when you're in your late 30s, when you're in your 40s or 50s, when you're a parent with kids. So I really appreciated that you talked about building out a consistent business model and consistent cash flow with your side hustle, whether that's real estate investing, flipping houses, some other unrelated side hustle, before quitting your day job and taking that side hustle full time. You talked about not only did you have a proof of concept, flipping 30 to 40 houses before you quit, uh, but you had built some consistency and predictability with that. Creating you knew that you could replicate that cash flow and scale it up, which I think is a really important like tactical point for people to consider. It just yeah, it's funny in my own observation of this, it seems like people fall on one of the extremes of the spectrum with this. Either they leap without looking, kind of like what you were talking about, or they get caught up in analysis paralysis, and they sit there and they just chew on their fingernails and lay awake at night and say, oh, I'm gonna do it next month. No, maybe not this month, it'll be next month,
Yeah.
and they never get around to doing it, no matter how prepared they are from a tactical standpoint. So yeah, I mean, are there any mindset shifts that were really helpful to you, or sort of a way of looking at this that helped you balance those two extremes of the spectrum?
Yeah, two things I would say to that. It's because you're right. Like that's where I'd say a lot of people fall. And I think what you need to do is like pick a timeline, 2 years, 3 years, a realistic timeline, like elongate your horizon past, I want to get out now. Cool. Everyone wants to get out now. You need to be able to do that. So, right. How can you be able to do it in 3 years? Like, what are the steps that have to happen to lead up to that? So, beginning with the end in mind and working backwards from there is probably a big one. And then, two, like just changing that mindset of, all those little things, like what's the worst that could happen, right? For 90 something percent of us, if you fall on your face, you can go back to the industry you were in, right? Like it's not like you just becomes this completely unemployable, like, oh, I'll never be able to get a job type of thing, right? Like your worst case scenario, like actually play that out and what does it look like, right? And once you start realizing, like, okay, well, I can go do this, or I can go do that, like maybe not awesome, you don't want that to happen, but it starts giving you a little bit more confidence of like, all right, let me take my swing here, right? Because the upside of taking that swing is much better than sitting there and not taking it.
Yeah, that's what's funny when you listen to interviews of people who work with older people, people on their deathbed, and they're talking about regrets. That is really the consistent regret is not regretting something that they did do. It's regretting the things that they didn't try to do. The things that they were too afraid to do. Those leaps they were too afraid to take. So I do think that this is something that that's the framework that people should be looking at this through. And like you said, people shouldn't be going off half cocked either. You need a plan and you do need to take those tactical steps too. Uh, but yeah, just to underscore something else that you said, for most people, the worst case scenario is the life that they're currently living, right? That just go back to working the same kind of
Yes.
job and living the same kind of life that they're already living right now. So, when you look at it through that lens of, the worst case scenario is you just go back to what you're doing now, you're already living your worst case scenario. So, I hopefully that notion kind of frees people up to take a bigger swing and go out there and do what they really want to be doing rather than playing small, playing safe, and trying to hedge every single bet. So,
Yeah.
Tom, in 30 seconds or less, how do you help people and how can people connect with you if they want to take you up on that help?
Sure. So we can link to my information in the show notes. If anyone wants to shoot me an email, give me a text. I'm happy to have conversations. I co-host the Straight Up Chicago Investor podcast. We have just a ton of free resources there. So you guys can link to that. And all that is the content, the calculators, everything there is free of charge. So take a look. If it provides value to you, let us know and we'd appreciate it.
Tom, well, thank you so much for joining us today. And guys, if you enjoy these quick, focused conversations that we have, please rate and review the show. It makes a world of difference to us. And on that note, we will catch you on the flip side. Want the cash flow, appreciation, and tax benefits of real estate without becoming a landlord? You've heard of REITs and real estate crowdfunding, but you probably don't know much about 5 other ways to invest passively in real estate. So we put together a free video course for you to show you how to consistently earn 15% plus returns from 5 lesser known hands-off ways to invest in real estate. And even more importantly, we'll keep risk front and center in that whole discussion. Because really, what's the point of investing for high returns if you also take on high risk, right? So visit sparkrental.com/free to take our free course. Each video is snackable at 10 to 15 minutes long, and the entire course takes less time than watching a movie. Looking forward to chatting with you from within the course.